Well, Northwest Finance MEC Wendy has been appointed acting premier. This as Supra Mahumapelo takes his leave of absence. Nelson was sworn in earlier today. Let's unpack this now further with political analyst Dr. Somadoda Fikeni. Dr. Fikeni, good evening. Thanks very much for joining us. Look, there's clearly a lot here that we do not know. Maybe I should start by asking you, what you think was responsible for Supra Mahumapelo's about turn, having said or confirmed yesterday that he was indeed going to resign today.
Well, I do think that his allies, both nationally within the ANC and in the province, might have prevailed on him not to go so easily, but to mobilize and show support so that he can bargain his exit from a position of strength, but also that he could also exercise some influence over the transition process, the appointment of those who will come after him, including the new executive for the province. And that in itself, it is clear that at some point he will go. But it's a matter of many others who have vested interest, knowing that the manner he is removed or he goes is likely to visit them sometime soon. And that is the reason why you find this turnaround.
But what could be their ultimate game plan?
The ultimate game plan is to flex muscle, understanding the balance of forces within the ANC, which is closely split between those who had supported the former president and the current president, and make sure that when you have processes of redeployments, processes which are still facing some of them, which are legal in nature, they will have a say and they will have some influence.
What are they banking on? Are they banking on perhaps Supra Mahumapelo being able to clear his name somewhat, given the there's a whole host of allegations that have been leveled against him, which led to those raids in his office, for example?
Actually, I don't think it's that. They understand the political game very well, that it's not clearing the name. Remember that the people who support him, just like the ones who support President Zuma, normally immunize the person they support by saying, you can't accuse this person, the courts have not proven him guilty. And then when the courts or commissions of inquiry come, then they turn around and say the whole thing is a conspiracy. Therefore, you cannot win either way. It means that it will go down to those processes, but they want to be sure that they are in a politically stronger position to bargain, even if in their exit they have a diminished power.
Now, there's an interesting aspect to this, Dr. Fikeni, and that is that you have the acting secretary in the Northwest, ANC, saying President Cyril Ramaphosa never asked Supra Mahumapelo to resign. And then you have him today, Supra Mahumapelo that is, saying there is a conspiracy within members of the ANC, within the provincial legislature, between them and members of the EFF in the provincial legislature. It almost seems like there is now part of the strategy is to actually take the ANC president out of this and blame other people. Why do you think that is?
I do think that they do know that the power of the presidency ultimately will always be there for deployments and other redeployments. If you confront him directly, at a certain point you might bank on him for your future being secured. Even if politically in your region you may have the muscle. But secondly, they are trying to make sure that they nullify their opponents within the province. Remember, this is a province that has been fraught with factionalism for some time. Therefore, it is not something new when they say some of the people are after us and this is a giant conspiracy. from the alliance partnership, from members within the ANC. And it is quite a common trend in nowadays as we move towards coalition politics. Equally so, you're finding many parties, especially major parties, which are in governance like the ANC and the DA, relying on smaller parties to deal with their internal party problems.
Well, if your analysis, what you've just said, is correct, then doesn't that mean that these people are not about supporting Supra Mahumapelo per se, but about safeguarding their own futures? And evidence to that is the fact that they are trying to keep the ANC president away from it, knowing, of course, that at the end of the day, he's the one ultimately who dispenses patronage.
Oh, certainly that is the case, because if your political future ends, you still need sometimes to be posted as an ambassador or to be posted in some boards and so forth. Presidency has quite some influence. And if you had gone all out fighting him directly, you may not have that security of tenure or security of deployment in those spaces. Hence, they have now localized the challenge in order not to be seen to be challenging the NEC or the ANC president.
Well, any similarities to the case of the one that immediately springs to mind is, of course, that of Jacob Zuma, who, when he had his back against the wall on the back of what former President Thabo Mbeki had done, which was to kick him out, then you had this disparate group of people who had very little in common, but were prepared to rally behind him, and as many of you said at the time, it was ostensibly because they were safeguarding their own futures. Am I taking it too far?
You're not taking it too far. We should remember that most of the black middle class or business class doesn't have the asset-based security. Hence, some of them have turned to politics as a way of social mobility or accessing resources. So when they lose those positions, it presents an existential crisis to them because they do not have another option. All they might have known is to rise through the ranks of the ruling party or to get into entrepreneurship where your business is not based on your business acumen, but rather on your ability to use the networks within the ruling party. Hence, therefore, the issue of factions and personalization of power has become such an entrenched element of our politics. People know that when this premier goes, our fortunes go down. When the other one comes up, they would rather be sure that it's a person who was within the cycle who will safeguard some of the access to power and influence.
Well, all of this has, of course, been met with a deafening silence from the ANC national head office. Why do you think that is?
I do think that it caught them off guard. They thought that the matter was behind. But at the same time, it might be the awkwardness that the top six itself is not necessarily singing from the same page, because Supra Mahumapelo now was the remaining symbol of the Premier League. And Ace Magashule would remember that he is the one who stood out to fight against any reopening of counting that could have actually disadvantaged or even discounted Ace Magashule. So those bonds and ties are still there. Hence, it makes it very difficult to have a decisive and a clear path of resolving some of these issues.
But it's obviously not the situation that Cyril Ramaphosa would have wanted to see himself in, given what has been happening, or what at least he and some members of that leadership have been trying to do over the past 3 weeks, that which led him to leave the Commonwealth Heads of State meeting to go and attend to that problem in the Northwest.
Remember that in politics, there is a yawning gap between what you wish could happen and what really happens on the ground, especially when you had a split decision and such a balance of forces within the ANC, with many leaders knowing that what happens to Supra Mahumapelo may happen to them because they may suspect that they belong to this or that faction. So that in itself has many other political equations involved, which makes it very difficult. It's awkward for the president, but at the same time, he has proven to be a patient person, consulting, negotiating, and therefore taking a decision or leaning to influence decisions at a certain point.
Dr. Fikeni, thank you very much for your insights this evening, political analyst based in Pretoria.